A political storm is brewing, and at the center of it is none other than Keir Starmer. Explosive documents have come to light, documents that could spell disaster for the Labour leader and even force his resignation within days. These aren't just minor scandals, we're talking about serious allegations, from shady dealings with EU officials to cover-ups that will send shivers down your spine. And once you see what's been uncovered, you'll understand exactly why Labour MPs are already making contingency plans for a future without Starmer at the helm. Just when you thought Starmer's leadership couldn't get any weaker, Donald Trump has unleashed a bombshell revelation that will leave you absolutely stunned. At a major political conference in the United States, the former U.S. president took direct aim at Starmer in a brutal assessment that's now making waves on both sides of the Atlantic. Trump didn't hold back. He accused Starmer of doing absolutely nothing to help bring an end to the war in Ukraine. Nothing, zero, zilch. In a time when Europe is facing one of its most severe crises in decades, our supposed leader has been sitting on his hands. The question now is, does he even care? Or is he more interested in his polished public image and expensive tailored suits than actually taking action? Did you know that over 95% of our viewers aren't subscribed to the channel? We totally get it, life gets busy, and sometimes it's easy to forget. But here's the thing, subscribing is completely free, and it really helps us keep creating the content you enjoy. So, why not hit that subscribe button and join our community? It only takes a second, but it makes a world of difference to us. Thank you for your support. Trump sarcastically referred to Starmer as a very nice guy, which, coming from him, is hardly a compliment. It's the political equivalent of when your gran tells you that you've got a lovely personality, when she really means you're utterly forgettable. Trump is essentially branding Starmer as a pushover, a weakling who simply isn't cut out for high-stakes leadership. And let's be honest, hasn't that been the impression for a long time now? A weak leader in a dangerous world. Trump went even further, implying that Starmer lacks the backbone to stand up to strongmen like Vladimir Putin. And really, can you picture Starmer in a room with Putin? What's he going to do, offer him a cup of tea and an apology for any inconvenience? The very thought of it is embarrassing. Trump also drew comparisons between Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron, branding them both as leaders who are all style and no substance. And, if we're being brutally honest, isn't that exactly what we've been witnessing? Starmer struts about in his designer suits, delivers grand, well-rehearsed speeches, but when it comes to actually getting things done, the record speaks for itself, nothing. But here's the real sting, Trump's message wasn't just an attack on Starmer himself, it was a warning to the world about Britain's declining leadership. According to Trump, the UK is at serious risk of becoming irrelevant on the global stage under Starmer's watch. And, truthfully, isn't that exactly how it feels? Britain was once a nation that commanded respect. A country that shaped global affairs and led with authority. Now, we have a leader who is being openly mocked by international figures, and worse, our own allies are starting to question whether we're still a force to be reckoned with. And this is where things get even worse for Starmer. If you thought the backlash was limited to world leaders, think again. The discontent at home is growing at an alarming rate, and it's no longer just political analysts raising concerns, it's ordinary Brits who are absolutely fed up. The British public is turning on Labour. GB News recently opened its phone lines for a discussion on Starmer and Labour's performance, and the reaction was nothing short of explosive. Caller after caller flooded in, venting their anger and frustration. It was like watching a dam break, years of pent-up resentment pouring out in an unstoppable tide. The anger wasn't just mild annoyance, it was rage. One particularly blunt caller didn't mince their words, declaring, "They're all liars." Just let that sink in for a moment. We all know politicians have a tendency to stretch the truth, but when even your own supporters start branding you as dishonest, you know you're in serious trouble. The sense of betrayal was palpable. You could hear it in their voices, Brits from all walks of life expressing their complete disillusionment with Labour. The frustration stems from one fundamental issue: Labour's promises simply don't match up with reality. Take immigration, for example. A caller from Manchester was absolutely furious about Labour's failure to take meaningful action. He argued that for years, politicians have talked tough on immigration, promising to get a grip on the issue, only for things to remain exactly the same, or get worse. And, honestly, who can blame him for feeling that way? And it's not just immigration that's fueling the backlash. A business owner from Cornwall called in, terrified about how Labour's radical climate policies are going to destroy her livelihood. Of course, no one is against protecting the environment, but at what cost? If hard-working British families are being left unable to sustain their businesses, then Labour's priorities are completely out of touch. Labour's support is crumbling, fast. But here's where things get really ugly for Starmer. This isn't just about a handful of angry callers. The data backs it up. Labour's ratings in the polls are now in freefall. Support is draining away at an alarming rate, and guess who's benefiting? Reform UK. That's right, people are so disillusioned with Labour that they're now actively looking for alternatives. It's as if Starmer has pulled the wrong block in a game of political Jenga, and now the entire structure is on the verge of collapse. And what's particularly striking is that this isn't about a single issue, it's everything. Immigration, economic policy, climate policies, the cost of living, no matter where you look, people feel that Labour has let them down. The frustration is real. It's visible in every call, and it's measurable in every poll. The knockout blow. Now, Tory MP Lee Anderson has landed what could be the final, crushing blow to Starmer's leadership. And he's not just attacking Labour's policies, he's going straight for Starmer's credibility. Anderson has accused Starmer of being desperate, realizing too late that Reform UK is a genuine threat to Labour's dominance. Starmer, he argues, has spent years ignoring the concerns of working-class voters, and now he's panicking. But, according to Anderson, it's too little, too late. The cracks in Labour's support base are widening, and unless something changes dramatically, the next general election could deliver a devastating blow to the party. The real question now is, how much longer can Starmer hold on? If the polls continue to slide, if public anger continues to grow, and if even his own MPs start losing confidence, then his days as Labour leader may be numbered. For now, all we can do is watch as the crisis unfolds. But one thing is certain, this is only the beginning. Keir Starmer is facing the toughest period of his leadership yet, and the cracks are starting to show. With growing discontent at home, a brutal takedown from Donald Trump, and now even his own party members seemingly plotting for life after him, it's beginning to look like his days as Labour leader might be numbered. But what's really driving this wave of dissatisfaction? Why is Lee Anderson's message hitting so hard with the public? Simply put, it's because he's tapping into what people actually want: secure borders, more police on the streets, and policies that put British people first. Sounds pretty reasonable, right? But in Starmer's world, that's somehow branded as an extreme right-wing fantasy. Anderson's bombshell, a reality check for Labour. Let's break down what Lee Anderson actually said. His statement was clear, direct, and resonated with a lot of ordinary Brits. Keir has finally woken up to the threat of Reform UK. There is nothing dangerous about a party that wants to secure its borders, put police back on the streets, and put British people first. And there it is. When you put it like that, it's hard to argue against, isn't it? Anderson isn't just criticizing Starmer's policies, he's declaring that Starmer's time is running out. And that's not just political rhetoric, that's a fellow MP effectively saying that Starmer's leadership is on life support. But here's where things get even more interesting. Anderson is hinting at something much bigger. He's suggesting that Labour MPs are already preparing for life after Starmer. Just let that sink in for a moment. The man is still in office, yet his own party members are already measuring the curtains for the next leader. It's like watching a political car crash in slow motion. Starmer is losing support from all sides. The warning signs are everywhere. The British public is turning on him. The polls show Labour's popularity nosediving, with many former supporters shifting their allegiance to Reform UK. World leaders are mocking him. Trump's scathing assessment of Starmer's leadership exposed just how little influence Britain has under his watch. His own party is looking for an exit strategy. Labour MPs know that if they want a real shot at power, they may need to ditch Starmer sooner rather than later. It's almost sad. Almost. But here's what's really telling: this isn't just about one policy failure. It's about everything. Anderson's comments reflect a growing frustration across the country. People are tired of weak leadership. They're tired of politicians who put globalist interests above national security. They're tired of a leader who seems more interested in pleasing the EU than listening to his own voters. And this is where Reform UK comes in. They're gaining traction because Labour has lost touch with what ordinary people actually care about. While Starmer plays political chess, the rest of Britain is dealing with real-life struggles, soaring costs, rising crime, immigration concerns, and economic uncertainty. Starmer's desperate fight to regain control. Starmer, of course, has tried to hit back. He recently made a big speech at the Scottish Labour conference, calling on his party to counter Reform UK's growing influence. His message? Only Labour can deliver real change for working people. But after everything we've seen, who's buying that? The problem for Starmer is that his words don't match his actions. He talks about standing up for the working class, yet he pushes policies that burden ordinary people. He warns about the dangers of right-wing populism, yet ignores the real concerns that drive people towards alternatives like Reform UK. It's almost as if he's living in his own little bubble, completely disconnected from the frustration that's boiling over in the country. Anderson's warning is clear: Starmer's time is running out. The clock is ticking. The vultures are circling. And Labour is in free fall. Can Starmer turn it around? Or is it too late? Right now, it's not looking good. The latest polls show only 26% of the public think Starmer is doing a good job, a shockingly low number that puts him barely ahead of Liz Truss. And we all know how that ended. He's facing huge decisions on defense spending and an upcoming meeting with Donald Trump, both of which could further expose his weak leadership. And most worryingly, his credibility is in tatters. The public no longer trusts his promises. Labour voters are defecting. And even his own MPs are quietly discussing alternatives. It's a political disaster in slow motion, and we've got front row seats. Could this be the beginning of the end for Starmer's Labour? Only time will tell. Starmer's latest disaster, his EU climate policy, is wreaking havoc. As if Starmer's leadership wasn't already in crisis, his latest blunder is making things even worse: his blind allegiance to the EU's new climate rules. And who's paying the price? British farmers. Here's the deal: Starmer has been pushing climate regulations straight from Brussels, insisting they're necessary to save the planet. But have you seen what they're doing to British farms? It's causing absolute chaos. Farmers are furious. And can you blame them? These new EU-imposed regulations are practically impossible to follow without farmers going bankrupt. They could completely change British agriculture, dictating what farmers can grow, what animals they can keep, and how they run their daily operations. The rules are so extreme that some farmers might have to shut down completely. It's as if the EU is micromanaging British farming from across the Channel. The betrayal of Britain's farmers. But here's what's really enraging people: the way Starmer is handling all of this. He's so desperate to impress his EU allies that he's completely ignoring the backlash at home. It's like he's forgotten who he's actually supposed to be working for. And it's not just farmers who are angry. Even key political figures are calling this a betrayal of Britain's national interests. Take Lord Frost, for example. The former Brexit negotiator didn't mince his words. Shame on Keir Starmer and Nick Thomas-Symonds for selling out this country's self-government to a foreign court. That's not just criticism, that's a full-on accusation of treachery. The real cost of Starmer's EU obsession. Let's be clear, these climate rules aren't just an inconvenience. They could fundamentally change the British agricultural industry as we know it. Some farmers may have to abandon livestock farming altogether just to stay afloat. The costs of complying with these rules could be astronomical, forcing many farms to shut down entirely. And when that happens, our food security will be at risk. We'll become even more reliant on importing food from overseas. But does Starmer care? Not in the slightest. He's too busy rubbing shoulders with EU bureaucrats to even acknowledge the real damage these policies are causing. What happens next? We are witnessing a slow-motion collapse of Starmer's credibility, both at home and abroad. His weak leadership has been exposed. His own party is losing faith in him. His poll numbers are plummeting. And his obsession with pleasing the EU is pushing Britain towards disaster. The real question is, how much longer can Starmer cling to power? Because if things keep heading in this direction, it won't be long before Labour is forced to look for a new leader. Our laws may be even our borders, and it's not just us saying this. Former Brexit negotiator Lord Frost has come out swinging against Starmer's approach. He said we knew it was coming but now seemingly confirmed Britain will return to alignment with EU food standards and climate change rules and accept ex-jurisdiction. Shame on Keir Starmer and Nick Thomas-Symonds for selling out this country's self-government to a foreign court. Did you catch that? Accept ex-jurisdiction, that means letting a foreign court have the final say over British laws. It's like we're handing over the keys to our legal system. But here's what really gets me. It's not just the content of these meetings that's concerning, it's the secrecy, the lack of transparency. We're talking about decisions that could affect every single person in this country, and Starmer is making them behind closed doors without any accountability. Think about it. No official records, no public statements, no chance for debate or scrutiny. It's like he's trying to bypass our entire democratic process and for what, to cozy up to the EU. Now I know what some of you might be thinking, maybe there's a good reason for all this secrecy, but come on, we're not talking about national security here, we're talking about fundamental changes to how our country is run. Don't we have a right to know about that? And let's not forget, this is the same Keir Starmer who's been banging on about transparency and accountability, the same guy who criticized the Tories for their lack of openness. Well, it looks like he's taking a page right out of their book and then some. So what does all this mean? Well, it looks like Starmer is running a shadow foreign policy right under our noses. He's making deals and promises that could change the very fabric of our society, and he's doing it without any oversight or accountability. You won't believe what Starmer has been up to behind closed doors. Remember those secret EU meetings we talked about? Well, Starmer is ready to pass the crown to Brussels, and when I say crown, I mean our laws, our standards, and yes, even our courts. Let's break this down, shall we? Starmer is going on about resetting our relationship with the EU. Sounds nice, doesn't it? Like we're all going to sit down for a cup of tea and sort things out. But here's the kicker, he's talking about way more than just trade. He's got much bigger plans that could change everything about how our country works. So what's Starmer really up to? He's ready to align us with EU rules on pretty much we're talking food standards, carbon emissions, you name it. It's like he's trying to sneak us back into the EU without even asking if that's what we want. But wait, it gets worse. Starmer is apparently okay with letting the European Court of Justice have a say in UK law. Again, a foreign court could end up making decisions about our laws. It's like we're handing over our sovereignty on a silver platter. Now you might be thinking, well, maybe it'll help our economy or something, but here's the thing, experts are warning that this could tie our hands when it comes to making our own laws, and not just for a few months or a year. We're talking years into the future. And let's talk about the cost of all this, because trust me, it's not cheap. We're looking at billions that could be spent on our NHS, our schools, or maybe fixing those potholes that keep wrecking our cars. But no, Starmer wants to spend it on making sure we're following EU rules to the letter. This isn't just about politics anymore. This is about the future of our country. It's about whether we want to be an independent nation that makes its own decisions, or if we want to be a puppet dancing to Brussels' tune. And Starmer seems to have made his choice. But here's the real kicker, he's doing all of this without telling us, without asking us, without even bothering to check if this is what the British people want. It's like he's forgotten who he's supposed to be working for. Now I know some people might say, oh, but this will improve trade relations and economic stability, and sure, that sounds nice on paper, but at what cost? Are we really willing to give up control over our own laws, our own standards, just for a bit of extra trade? Is that really what Brexit was about? And let's not forget this. isn't just about the EU. This is about how we run our country. It's about whether we trust our own politicians to make decisions for US or if we're going to outsource the job to Brussels. It's about whether we believe in British democracy or if we're okay with letting foreign courts have the final say. Starmer's plans could reshape our relationship with the EU for generations to come, and we need to ask ourselves, is this really the future we want for Britain? What do you guys think about all of this? Let us know all your thoughts in the comments below, and if you haven't already, like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content on the issues that matter for Britain's future. Together we can make a difference.